Hey folks, wanted to make an update on the 440 that we think is Anthony Northern #1. If you haven't checked out the previous video of us finding the locomotive, check that out. I have some other update videos, and also too, the original video of us finding it gives you the backstory and some of the history on the locomotive. My little update here is going to be kind of long-winded. I am going to throw a little history in here because I've found more information out since I've been studying this railroad, and like I've said, I've met some really awesome people that have been helping me. So let's see, we found the locomotive 7 months ago, and since then I've gotten in contact with people that are kind of experts in the area as far as local history and railroads, and they've been a huge help. And then, you know, the idea is like, hey, let's see if we can dig this thing up. And as I said in the last video, a lot of politics. Arkansas River is a navigable waterway. You can't just legally dig. If it was on private property, it'd be a whole nother story. So that's kind of when I got the Kansas Historical Society involved. I called them, and the archaeologists came out, and they were quick. They came out like within a month of me contacting them to just check the site out. They've been a huge help on kind of helping me in the process, but unfortunately, this isn't a project that they can tackle right now, just kind of due to finances and other projects going on. It's kind of hard to just rush things along kind of short notice, like, we want this thing, we want to see what's under there. So they have to plan that. So we kind of hit a dead end there. They're still helping us out with, you know, as far as information and permits and things like that. So during the permit process, I've been investigating, and so has the Kansas Historical Society, helping me figure out what permits I need. And there's so many, and we're trying to fish through what we need. So one permit I know we needed was like a construction permit. I don't remember what it was, and in order for me to have a plan for the construction of taking this locomotive out or digging it up, I need to know what's down there, because we don't know. And so that led to me calling KU, Kansas University. And I'm pretty sure it's called KGS, Kansas Geological Survey. That's who I got in contact with. They have ground penetrating radar. And I know what you're thinking, wow, this is crazy. You have ground penetrating radar for some old pieces of iron under the ground. Yeah, that's what we're going to do. So they're interested in helping us. Now, once again, this takes time. I asked them kind of what info we can share, and basically what has to happen, and I could be slightly wrong with this, is in order for KU to do this for free, like us, me not pay them, it has to be, I think, like a college class. It has to be something like that. So basically they'll come out hopefully here at the end of the year and just kind of check the site out. And no ground penetrating radar or anything like that. And then the following year, if they get approval, they can come out with the ground penetrating radar and see what is under the ground. And then if that gets approved to do the dig, they'll come out the following year. So if everything went perfectly planned with KU, we're really not looking until 2026, 27, which that's a really long time. I kind of don't want to wait that long, but we're kind of at odds. I mean, I don't have the money. We've been throwing the idea around of starting a 501c3, a nonprofit, to hopefully fund some money to be able to dig this thing up, or at least expose it so we can see what's there, because it is going to cost money. I live 2 hours away. I mean, it's not like I can just run down there. We're going to need equipment. And, you know, we're riding on yes and no's from other organizations. So like KU, Historical Society, like this possibly might not happen. So that's kind of why we're like, hey, me and a couple of my colleagues, is like, let's think about starting a nonprofit and get a little bit of money in case things don't work out. Because it would really suck in 2 years for us to get to a point where it's like, well, we can't do it. And we could have been raising money, you know. I really don't know how much the ground penetrating radar costs. That's probably at least $5,000. The nearest place is Kansas City. I talked to a guy, we've been kind of talking back and forth about pricing and trying to figure out what it's going to take for them to come out. And you may think that the GPR is overkill because we can see the locomotive, but I want to share some things with you guys. I've got several books here. If you've not seen this book, look at your local library, especially in Kansas. This is the Wheat Belt route. Lots of really good info in here. Lee Berglund was the one that wrote this. Kansas Pacific, the history on that. Good book. It mentions Otto Byers and the Anthony Northern Railroad. Byers had a lot to do with building the UP, or excuse me, the KP. Iron Men, Iron Horses. Lee references quite a bit of stuff from Iron Men, Iron Horses in his book. So I went to this book to get more information on the railroad. And here's another book by Robert Collins, another author, Kansas guy. I've actually reached out to him, and he has in this Kansas Train Tales has a lot of information on Byers, and because there isn't much out there, and he did an awesome job. So I've been reading these books, and here's some conclusions. Why is the locomotive in the water? Let's set the background here. The railroad didn't have money. They were broke from day one. They went into receivership, I think, in 1922, 1921. And basically that receivership, I believe, has to do with like taxes or something, not paying taxes, basically in debt. And so from the beginning, the railroad was buying, they never bought new locomotives. They always bought hand-me-downs, a lot from the Rock Island. I think some from the UP or KP, I'm not sure. Everything was hand-me-downs. They were older locomotives. Anthony Northern number 1, when they got it, by the time they got it, was like 20, 30-something years old. It was old. And in Lee's book, you're going to see lots of pictures. And I would highly suggest you guys getting it. I need to get it. Got this from the library. You will see in Lee's book a lot of reused equipment. I mean, old tenders off of locomotives used as like dump beds. Tenders used for push blades on their trencher. They've cut boilers off for culverts off old wore out locomotives. And they really used every piece they had. You got to remember, they didn't even have ballast under their tracks. It was just straight ties and rail on the ground. You know, they didn't have money. So there's a lot of people saying, well, they probably dumped the locomotive in the river to stop the bridge from washing away. Maybe. I just find it hard to believe. I mean, we've got pictures of them, you know, cutting locomotives up and the boilers off and putting culverts in. Why was this not as important? It's just odd to me. And some things really stuck out to me in Lee's book. And I'll show you guys. On page 79, I'll just read it. I know it may take a minute, but I'll just read this in the epilogue. So Lee states, a recent development was discovered on the remains of the tender from 440 number 1 on the river bed of Arkansas River south of Kinsley. The rear corners of the tender with marker light brackets still attached were salvaged. This tender is identifiable as being from number 1 by a very distinctive patch that remained on one of the salvaged pieces. This patch is very clearly seen in several photos of number 1's remains of number 1. Remains of the tender floor are still in the sand, nose down at a 45-degree angle, with the front of the tender far below the surface and inaccessible. So here's the deal, folks. We went down there. We didn't find a tender. We found a locomotive. We found a firebox. There's no way that is the tender. And Lee, in his book, shows, I'll try to find the page, and I'll put it on the video. On page 87 in his book, it shows the corners of the tenders. Okay? So either he cut these off or somebody cut these off later down the line when the river dried up. We go to page 66 in the book, okay? Right here. You guys can see that. This is the side of a tender. And Lee seems to think that this is off number 1. Now, why would they just cut the side and leave the corners? I don't know. Maybe they just did. But it's just not making sense to me why they would only use this part of that locomotive. I mean, we don't know if this is actually the tender off the locomotive, but basically this here is one of the trenchers that was used to make ditches on the side of the track that they made. This was homemade. They had a lot of homemade rigs. And I'll show you guys another page here. On page 69, you can see in the picture here, these are boilers off some of their 6-wheelers. It looks like a 460. Now, those locomotives might have been bad and they cut the boilers off and they made culverts. And you can see in the picture below it, there is what appears to be a old firebox off one of their locomotives. They use as kind of like a dump truck to dump ballast if they, used any ballast. So what I'm trying to say here is, why I just don't, things don't line up. The people have seen the tender but not the locomotive. And in the book, it mentions in the epilogue, in the 60s, some of it was salvaged for scrap iron by an individual who scavenged such items. The story is unsubstantiated, but part of the tender shell showed definite evidence of having been cut away. So this account may be true. So here's what's weird. If a lot of this was scrapped in the 60s by some scrapper, how and why did the corner tenders survive? Because these corner tenders still exist somewhere out there. That's what's weird. I didn't realize that the tender was still there all this whole time. I just kind of got so excited about it. I didn't know. It's just crazy that we have found the locomotive but not the tender. Now, when Lee wrote this book, them guys went out there. There was water in the river, so stuff wasn't as accessible. And if you guys look in the other videos, you'll see I think the boiler has been cut off the locomotive. I really do. But a couple weird things is, in the book and any pictures you see, I think the most pictures taken of any locomotive was of Anthony Northern number 1. Which is odd to me. I think it was kind of a prized possession to buyers. And the reason why I say that, in the book that Robert Collins wrote, he talks about Byers a lot. And Byers was a historian. He did like to write history pieces for the Kansas Historical Society. He talks about it in this book. And I feel as if Byers was a type of person that, since that was their first locomotive, that I don't think he would just scrap it. I really don't. I don't think he'd throw it in the river to stop the bridge from washing out. That's my opinion. I'd like you guys, I want to hear your guys' theories. I want to hear what you guys have to think about how it got in there. I've heard stories from insurance scams to it fell off the bridge when it flooded, to they sold the locomotive to somebody local, and when the railroad went out of business, they drove it off into the river. Just so many different theories. And it's fun. It's really fun trying to figure all this out and trying to put the pieces together. Another thing, there was a separate railroad that I keep saying Otto. It's Byers. Byers had a separate railroad down in north of Liberal. Single train, single locomotive, just hauling grain wagons. And in Lee's book, it talks about what locomotives that Byers gave to his secondary railroad, which is the Kansas Oklahoma, is what they called it. Now, the Kansas Oklahoma started 1922, 1934. My buddy Dave is placing when the locomotive, this is his theory, Anthony Northern number 1, he places it in 1921 of when it went in the river. So let's pretend it never went in the river in 1921. There was a lot of floods. So let's say it survived 1921. In 1922, they gave, they gave the Kansas Oklahoma, one of their 440s, which was number 4. It was another Brooks, 1887. And, why not number 1? It's their oldest locomotive. I mean, obviously they're giving them the 440s, the less desired ones, besides, they have 460s. So, why not number 1? And that kind of changes the timeline. Was 1, 2, 3's been scrapped? Did 1 go in the river and that's why they didn't give it to him? I don't know. But I guess what's odd is there's so much information in this book, and in these books, specifically Lee's, is it's never questioned on why the locomotive's in the water. And it very well could be they cut it up, threw it in there to stop the bridge from washing out, as I've said 1,000 times. But I just don't believe that. I think that if the locomotive went in the water, this is my theory, I think Wichita Northwestern wanted to keep it quiet. They're in receivership. Their prices were a little higher than like Missouri Pacific and everybody. There was some complaints. I read that in some of the local Kinsley newspapers from the 1920s. That's my theory. I think the bridge washed out and it did go in, or the bridge gave out and it went in. And my other theory on why I don't think they threw it in there is because if you're going to throw that locomotive in and the tender in, why wouldn't you put the locomotive on one end of the bridge and the tender on the other to stop those banks from washing out? As far as I know, on the south bank, there is nothing. So, you guys just listened to me ramble on for all this time. This is what I need from anybody watching. I want people to deep dive on the internet. Go to your local library, specifically if you're in Kansas, western Kansas, and look up information, any and all information you can find on the railroad. I know there's something out there that can explain this. Newspapers. I've even gone as far as looking at insurance companies from the 20s, trying to see if there was an insurance claim. It's just too far back to be able to figure that out. So what I need from you guys is do research. I have an email on my YouTube now. I'll post it in the description. Email me any info you have. I want to hear your theories. Go ahead, if you want to comment, that's fine too. I want to hear your theories why it's in the river. I want to hear all the old wives' tales everybody's got. And 2, I need honest advice. If it's just the firebox and part of the tender that's left in the water, does everybody want to see it dug out? Is it worth digging it out? To me, it is. I don't care if it's just firebox. I think it's 100% worth digging out. But do you guys think that? I think that's really important. If I'm the only person that thinks that, then maybe we should just leave it there. But I want to read something to you guys in closing real quick. This is something that Lee left in his book. So, it's again, Lee's book, Lee Berglund. So, in the paragraph in the epilogue here it says, perhaps at some future date, when conditions are right, an archaeological dig can be made to determine if the locomotive itself is indeed under the sand, and if any salvage operations might be feasible. So, the guy who wrote this book's long gone, and I think he thinks it's worth it, at least investigating. So like I said, possibility that we are going to start a nonprofit and raise a little money. That money is going to go toward potentially exhuming this or digging part of it up, and some of the permit fees. It's not official yet. I've got some people interested, and yeah. So I appreciate you guys watching. Any questions? Drop in the comments, email me, whatever. I need people's help on investigating this. I think it's a lot of fun. And yeah, we'll catch you on the next one.